get started. So today's going to be somewhat of a challenging chapter. So it's good that you guys are here, because if you try to dig this out of the book, it's not easy. I'm not happy with this chapter in the book, especially I'm going to show you a problem that's in the book, but we don't have any slides for it. But I got an Excel spreadsheet that I've created, and I'll post it for you so you can take a look at it. So we're primarily talking about constraints today. And constraints are a natural part of managing any project, because rarely are you going to get a blank check. Rarely will somebody say, go do your project and we'll give you all the money and all the time that you need and all the people. That's not going to happen, is it? So what will happen a lot of times is that you'll get enough money to get started and enough time and enough people, but then when you get started, your people will be taken away because they're going to be put on another project. Or someone will say, we want it done sooner, or we want it done for less money. So if you don't have a good foundation built for project management, when somebody does that to you, you're going to be in trouble because you won't know how to go back to them. So today's lecture is going to be dealing with those constraints and how you can work with them to keep your project on track. So there's a couple nice tools here to use that we're going to look at. So that's really what today's discussion is all about. So we have a couple different types of constraints. We have constraints that are related to time, and we have constraints related to resource. And we also talked about money, and that's really not going to be part of the lecture today. You can smooth things. So, for example, if someone's not available on Monday and you need them to be there on Monday, well, you can do it on Tuesday, right? So you take the work that was going to be done on Monday and you move it to Tuesday. So now it's smooth. It can be done, but at what cost? You're going to delay your project by 1 day. So typically when you smooth, you're going to add more time to the project. And leveling is a form of smoothing. Project management software can help you manage resource-constrained schedules. So for the Microsoft project assignment number 2, you experienced that, and I showed you that because certain resources were not available. So even though you had a finish to start constraint, where if something is finishing on a Monday and you're going to start on a Tuesday, if those resources were not available for Tuesday, it moved your project schedule out until they were available. You remember that? And so that's a perfect example of how the software can help you with those resource constraints. And then this project budget. So let's get going on this. So just as a reminder, here's the flow for a project. So we have our scope, our statement of work, project charter, work breakdown structure. You're going to do a network schedule. Then you're going to do your resource and cost scheduling, which we're doing today. And then you're going to come up with your master plan. So this is something that's developed once all of this is done. And as a reminder, there's risk to be identified and managed all the way through this process from beginning to end. So risk management, just as a reminder, it's not an event. It's not something that you do just one time. It's something that's done continuously throughout the entire project. So you cannot say you have a schedule until you assign resources. So when you just did your Microsoft Project Assignment 2, once you assigned the resources to the schedule, you saw a bunch of little red figures in that column. Remember that? And that said that now you have a schedule, but you have a problem because you have some resource conflicts. And then when you did your leveling, it extended the date, right? And the time to 295 days, but all the red went away. So then you could say, okay, now we have a schedule. Game is on. So you know that when you have a project portfolio, that's consisting of a lot of different projects of different types. But before the portfolio is created, there's a lot of proposals. And you cannot have, you can never honor all the proposals because you don't have enough resources to do all of them. So you're going to assign or create a new project based on your priorities. You're going to use your resources based on the projects that are the most important. Now I want to mention something, that you're not always going to pick the project that's going to give you the biggest benefit from a profit standpoint. There are some projects that you need to work on that are mandatory. So for example, if your company gets visited by some government agency, let's say it's OSHA, and OSHA says your facility is dangerous, somebody's going to get hurt or killed here, you need to initiate these 3 projects right now, otherwise we're going to pull your license. We're going to shut you down. So that's a compliance project. So you can see that that's sort of a project, even though you're not going to get any extra money, it's still a priority because it's going to allow you to keep functioning. Okay? All right. And time phasing. You need to make sure that all of your tasks are time phased. So let's just keep going. So we have a couple different types of constraints. So technical, logical constraints are considered to be interchangeable. So let's talk about a technical constraint. So in the electronics world, when you are making a type of electronic equipment and you're buying some electronic components, some resistors and transistors and all of that stuff, there is something called burn-in, and you're going to take a electronic component and you're going to plug it in and let it run for 3-4 days to make sure it's not going to fail. And if it lasts 3 or 4 days, you'll say, this is going to last for years. So you can't get started, you can't take that electronic component and put it into a product before you do the burn-in of 3 to 4 days. Because if you do that, you are unnecessarily introducing risk to your project. So that's a technical constraint. A logical constraint could be, let's say that you have a nephew who is he's a referee, and he referees baseball games. So someone wants him to come to Macon on Saturday and referee a baseball game. The problem is that person, his 5-year-old daughter is on a soccer team, and they have a soccer match on the same day, and he's the coach. So you can see right there, it's not logically possible for that person to be in 2 places at once. You understand? So the baseball game in Macon will probably have to get another referee or umpire because the person's with his 5-year-old daughter. You understand? Okay, so a resource constraint is where you have an absence or shortage of something that you need, and that's going to impact the sequencing. So just like we talked about with the baseball game and the soccer or whatever it is, the burn-in, you're going to have to sequence your project activities differently. And typically the resources are people, materials, and equipment. And what we're talking about here is we can have time constraints where something needs to be done by a certain date. So if you get a visit from OSHA and they say that your facility is dangerous, you need to have these things fixed by next Friday. They're giving you a time constraint, an imposition that has to happen. And if today is Monday and it's a week from Friday, it needs to be done, your duration is fixed. But you may have flexible resources where people can come and go. They may come in on a Sunday, for example, because you don't want to stop production. So they'll come in on Sunday when no one's working, and then they will fix the things that need to be fixed. Then you also have resources where you may have 4 engineers that are needed, just like what you did on your Microsoft project assignment 2. You had 4 industrial engineers. You had a couple of marketing specialists, remember that? And that prevented you from doing certain things because you loaded that information into Microsoft Project, and that dictated what would happen because you could not exceed. And we're going to take a look at a problem here in a minute that's going to illustrate that. So here's an example. So we have this project for a handheld electronic medical reference guide, and we have 12 tasks here with different durations, different predecessors, different resources. So this should look very familiar because this is very, very similar to what you just had with your Microsoft Project Assignment 2. Now, the key thing for this example is that you have design engineers. They're the only resource that's needed. And here they are, DE. And you have 8 that can be allocated. So you can see right now, we don't have anything that's over allocated, do we? So what you could do, if you were lazy, you could just say, well, I'm going to sequence these 12 tasks, and I'm just going to sequence them out over time. You follow me? So if we were to do that, the total duration for this project would be 17, 24, 34, 44, 48, 50, 75, 80, 87, 92, 97 days it's going to take. But you don't want to do that because that's going to take too long. Instead, you could do this more scientifically and rely on the predecessors and set up a network diagram. You following me on this? Okay? So this is the beginning. And for this project, we're going to start on January 1st, 2021. And to make it easy, they can work 7 days. 7 days a week. So there's no constraints when it comes to time. No holidays, no Saturdays and Sundays. They work 7 days a week. Okay? So I guess this is a pretty important project. So all this is in your book. And so initially, given what we have set up, we start off with this architectural decision. Then we have 3 tasks that are using this as a predecessor. These 2 tasks are predecessors for these 3. And this one is a predecessor for 4. And then these 4 are predecessor for that one. So the critical path for this project is illustrated by the blue boxes, the blue. And you may say, well, why is this on the critical path? Because this takes 10 days, but this one takes 12. So remember, the critical path is the path that has the longest sequence. the longest duration, but what's happening here is that you have this task that has 25 days. You see that? And these tasks here are pretty short, aren't they, by comparison? So because this is 25 days, it automatically made this one be on the critical path. You see that? So you'll be able to see that hopefully if you study it a little bit. So this is how we start off. Before leveling, before. So again, it's like your Microsoft project, assignment 2, where you had 260 days, and it ended on December 31st. Is that ringing any bells with you guys? You may have put that behind you because like that assignment's over. But that's what happened before you did any leveling. Well, let me back up. Before you did leveling and you recognized the dates, the holidays, it pushed the December 31st to, I think, January the 11th. Remember that? And it was still 260 days. Okay, and a lot of you said that it could not be done at 260 days. But it can be done in 260 days, but you can't do it on December 31st. So there was some logical disconnection there, but that was okay because we're just starting out here. Okay, now, yeah.
Can you go back?
Back how far?
Right there.
Yep.
So we only have 8 engineers.
Right.
Now that adds up to 13. Am I looking at it wrong?
We have 8 engineers.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, because we haven't leveled yet.
Oh.
We're screwed up. We haven't done it.
Okay.
We're like how we were in the project assignment before we did the leveling, but Jen moved it out to 295 days. But good observation. Because you led right into the next table. Okay? Now the next table, this is awesome. This is fantastic. Okay? And this probably should have been done before this. Because then it would have identified where you have some issues, okay? So, as Bo identified, you only have 64 hours here, don't you? 8 times 8, correct? 8 engineers, 8 hours a day, 64. So look at this. We're messed up every day except one. One. So we got to do some major work here to move this work out. Move it out, right? So the first thing we got to do is we got 72. This has to be 64. So something's got to happen here, and likewise all the way. And you can do, I recommend that you do this manually, if you can. Because when you rely on Microsoft Project to do this, they're going to give you a solution, but it's not the best solution. It's not the best, and it's just a limitation in the software. This is fairly manageable because you only had 12. You have 12 tasks and 8 resources, so you could do this manually. But anyway, create this table, and this is a visual representation of what we just saw. So here's what we have. It's 800%, right? 8 engineers. So you make a line. You basically make bars 800%. And just as we saw, this is the only one where we're not messed up. And sure enough, we're not messed up because all the blue here are the excess requirements on those engineers. You with me? So you can see right here we're at 2,000%, which is 128. No, 168. Anyway, we're over allocated. So these are just the percentages. Yeah. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? We're going to even out the varying demands by delaying non-critical activities with slack, which is what happened in your problem you just did for Microsoft Project. And you want to increase the utilization as much as possible. So you may have to delay some start activities, and the duration is going to be increased. Now, they're using a method called the parallel method, and we're applying heuristics here. So what we can do, and I'm not going to make you do this, but I do want you to understand, you're going to look at which of these tasks have slack, total slack, and free slack. And in most instances, they're the same, but they're different here and here because these are typically tasks that are at the end of the project sequencing, or they're going to cause a problem for a subsequent activity if they're not done on time. So this is before leveling. Can't remember which is which. This is before, this is after. So what happens after leveling is we now have a different critical path, don't we? So this one, internal spec's now going to take 12 days, and we're over here. So we're going to finish this on 226 or 226, yeah. And before it was 214. See that? So the fact that we've leveled these resources, we've added 12 days to the schedule. And we have a new critical path. And here's a comparison now. So this is after leveling, this is before leveling. So this is very, very similar to the problem you just did in Microsoft Project, isn't it? So if you understood the logic for that problem you just did, you should be able to hang with this. And I'm not going to be emphasizing how to do all these calculations on the exam next Tuesday. I'm going to be relying more on conceptual things. So hopefully you guys are going to understand that. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want you to go into your book, or I'm going to show something in the book. And this is the thing I'm not real happy with from this author. I think they unnecessarily overcomplicated things, which sometimes happens. Okay, so this is page 268 in the book, 268. It's 268 and 269. And you probably don't even have your book with you, but this is what it's related to. If you remember reading this, you may not even have gotten into the book yet to do your smart book stuff. So this is kind of a preview. So make a note. If you haven't even looked at this yet, make a note that we're looking at pages 267 and 268. Okay? Now, the problem is the author on 266 apart. You see this on this page here? Those are all the instructions that they're giving you that you need to follow. And this is overly complicated. So what I'm doing here, and again, I'm going to post this so you guys can follow this. I'm doing the same problem on 267 and 268, but I'm doing it in a simpler version. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look. So we have a schedule here where we have 7 tasks, right here, 1 through 7, and we have resources. 2 people or 1 people, okay? How easy is that? We have the duration of those 7 tasks. We have the earliest start. We have the latest finish. And then we have the slack. Okay? Follow me so far? And we've calculated before earliest start, earliest finish, latest finish. For this problem, they just did this shortcut. Now, here is the sequencing. So, task 1 is supposed to finish by period 2. And so what we do is we start off with that. So remember, it's 2 days, right? So 1 day, 2 days. Everybody got that? We need 2 people for each day. So we have 3. This one needs 2. So right now we have one person surplus, correct? And here we have 1 person surplus as well. Then what we've done is we go to 3 and 4, and they're going to start after, I'm sorry, okay. Task number 2, there are these rules. There's these rules that you're following. So the rule is that you're going to pick the one with the lowest slack of these 3. You see that? And the lowest slack is task 3. Everybody see that? That's the simplified rule from the previous pages. So we know that if we want to do task 3 in period 3, it's going to take 2 people. So we put the 2 people there. Then, we can't do this one. I put an X. The reason why we can't do this is because it takes 2 people, doesn't it? If we put this one here, we're going to have 4 people, and we're going to be overloaded, aren't we? So by default, we're going to do task 4, which is only going to take 1 person. You see that? So now we have 3 and 3. Resource load, resource available, we're good to go. And we do the same thing in this period. Okay, and remember, this one only has a duration of 2 days. So here's the duration, we're done. But this one has 4 days. So we're going to continue to go with that. And we're here. Okay? So this first example is stopping at the end of period 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to continue on, and all we're doing is we're using the rules that exist on the previous page. So this one, I'm going to take care of task 2. And one of the things that I'm doing here that the book doesn't do, I'm color coding each step. So step 1, where I only did these, is in black, right here. The next one then is for task 2, it's in red, okay? And this one cannot start until period 6 and 7 because we don't have enough programmers, okay? If we want to do it here, we don't have enough because we're already maxed out, aren't we? Same thing here. Same thing here. It would be at 4. Same thing here. So what I'm doing is I'm putting an X in these cells to show you that you can't schedule. But in period 6 through 7, before we put the red, this was 0, right? It was right here. See that? There's nothing going on. So we take our 2 and load them in. It's going to take 6 days. So here we are, 6 days. You see that? Everybody with me so far? So all I'm doing now is I've already taken care of task 1, 3, 4, and now I'm doing 2. Got it? Okay, so let's take a look at the next one then. Now, I'm going to do task, here we go, task 6, okay? So task 6 has the lowest slack and can start after task 3. So here's task 6. 6, it only takes one person. These take 2 people, that's why there's a 2. Here's a 1, only takes 4 days. So I added in there 3 people, right? And now, but now I'm maxed out. So far, I'm able to add those 2, and I'm not overloaded. Everybody got that? And the reason why I'm doing this the way I am, because I'm following the rule to use the lowest slack. And there's one more that we have to do. Actually, 2 more, sorry. Okay, task 5. Go up. Okay, task 5 is going to start after task 3. But I need one person, and look, I can't put that person here, can I? Because I already have 2 and 1. So I'm Xing out these cells, but then I can start it here in 10 through 11 because I had some surplus blue. Come on, blue, blue, blue. I already did blue, wait a second. Green, yeah. So this one should not be here. It should be here. So I basically combine, I moved this one up here. No, I'm taking it back. It's not blue, it's turquoise. Test 7, here it's 7. Okay, I got it. All right, yeah, it's happening out here. Okay, it's 2 days. It can't start until 12 and 13 and 13 and 14. You see that? So what's happened so far is originally, before we did the leveling, we thought we could finish at the end of 12, but we cannot do that. We're having to go out to 14. You see that? So now we're not overloaded, are we? But we had to go out 2 periods. So this is the simplest example that you could ever want to do to illustrate how resource leveling works. It's not that complicated, is it? But I guarantee you, if you try to do this from the book, because there's 2 problems. The first thing is there's way too many things to walk through on page 266, and then the author does not give you the color coding for each step. The author just puts lines through numbers, and you don't know where they came from unless you're brilliant, and I'm not brilliant. I know enough to do this, so I wanted to make it simple for you guys, and hopefully this did it, okay? All right, so when you do your smart book this week, I'm hoping that what we talked about is going to be helpful. Okay, now, something else you can do is you could split your activities, split. So right now, I just had somebody come in and put some new sod in for me, a new lawn. And they basically took a big field and they did half of the field and they put the sod down for the other half. And now they're gone because they're doing something else. They're going to come back in 2 weeks and they're going to do the other half. You follow me? So he worked on the task, then the split, and then the rest of the task. So that's another thing you can do. You can divide your task into sections if it is helpful to do that. But you're going to interrupt. You're going to send your resource to another activity, as I just mentioned. And right now, I got a field, a half of a field. Half of it has grass, the other half is the field. that's not causing me any problem at all, okay? So I don't have any large startup or shutdown costs. But when you split a task, you're probably not going to make the schedule. Especially when you started, you didn't plan on splitting. You didn't plan on splitting. So if I hired somebody and said, dude, can you come and do this whole area? You say, yeah, I can do it. So the person comes, day 1, day 2, they do it, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I got to go work somewhere else for 2 weeks. Like, dude, I didn't want to wait. But now I got to, so I got to split it. You follow me? So when that happens, if it's a surprise, it's going to cause you to not meet your schedule. But if you can plan for it in the beginning, if you would have told me that, then I could have went in and planned for it. You with me? Okay. So here's an example of what we're talking about. So you didn't split this. We split it into 3. So we're okay because we're still at the same endpoint. But look, now you got a shutdown and a startup. Shutdown and startup. So what it did, it added this time out here. Okay, so it's pretty simple. Okay, so once you do all this, then you're going to come up with your cost baseline. And again, when you guys did your Microsoft project, number 2, you submitted a PDF that had your Gantt chart in a cost table. Remember that? And it said what the total cost was. And a lot of people had different costs. Some people had 900,000, 890 something, 904, 300,000, 1,800,000. It was all over the place. But that's what we're talking about here. Before you get started, you're going to take the cost of all your resources and the time, and you're going to then come up with a budget, okay, baseline budget. That's what this slide pretty much talks about. And here's an example of how they do that. And again, this is similar to what you just did. So here's the labor rate. Here's how much they're going to charge in thousands of dollars per time. If you didn't have Microsoft Project, you could do this manually. And a lot of companies do it manually, but they have templates that they built in Excel where once you enter your basic data, it will automatically populate these cells with formulas. And again, this is very similar to what we just saw earlier, right? Where you're putting in how much time each person is going to be spending. And you guys did a version of this with your assignment because you did a resource cost table. Remember that? And you had to say which resource costs the most. You could only do that if you came up with this and then multiplied it by the cost. So again, this is all review, hopefully. And here's the cost for the project. And some of you did a cash flow which looked like this. Again, this is right out of Microsoft Project. This is the resource sheet, right? You guys know by now. And then here's an example. This is from another class that I teach where we've assigned things. So and now this is really good. This is showing, this is enabling you to enter your actual cost, okay? Once you get started, you can put in how much time you actually spent. Then you're going to get numbers here, and it's going to say based on the baseline, which you had set, here's the variance and here's the remaining. You don't have any differences here because we don't have any actual work done yet. And this is how you would do it in a Microsoft Project. And this is how it would show up. Okay,